Hello everybody, this is Phillip Flippo with the Alaska Frontier. And last year my wife and I were lucky enough to win the lottery to get to go to McNeil River in Alaska, a place with the highest concentration of bears on planet Earth. And oh boy, did we get up close and personal with them. So join us on our little adventure. Now, McNeil River is a very remote location, so you can't drive to it. It is only accessible by float plane, and the geological formations on the way out there are unlike anything I have ever seen in Alaska. When our plane first splashed down in McNeil River, it really started to sink in just how remote this place was gonna be. There were maybe 8 structures, and all of them pretty rugged looking by the time we were approaching the beach. We would only have the food we brought. The only water we would get would be from rivers and streams, and once this plane left, we would be completely and utterly alone, with just a handful of other strangers tent camping amongst the bears. We set up camp in the tall grass and realized that there were no fences. We would literally be right next to the bears in their natural habitat. Yet, even though it seemed like they were right around the corner, the bears have long learned that they shouldn't come into base camp, so they stay very far away, as you can see here. We would have to wait till our first outing in order to get a closer look. Each morning we would have orientation before we'd set off on a long trek to get to see the bears. Our friendly and fearless guides would set our expectations and let us know what we're likely to see along the way. Every day we'd begin our trek by going through the tall sedge grass and walking towards the mighty McNeil River. Each day we crossed rivers and streams. We walked along planks up into the high hills. We took the same paths every single day. That way, the bears would know when the humans were around exactly where they would be. But then suddenly, one of our guides stopped us, and we got to see our first close-up of a coastal brown bear. We eventually made our way down to the beach, where within 5 minutes, we had a curious bear come to pay us a visit. This moment was a life-changing one. I had never been this close to such a large animal in their natural environment, and it was absolutely incredible. This beautiful animal was about to come within about 3 feet of us. They clearly acknowledged us, sniffed the air, made eye contact with several of us, and then continued walking away. This was a normal day in this bear's life, and in no way were they worried about why we were here or what we might do to them. These bears have been seeing human beings in the same spots and on the same trails for decades. This is why McNeil River is like no other place on Earth. Being in this ancient place was strangely calming, not just for the humans that were there, but also for the bears. When the bears weren't out fishing or play fighting, they often were seen just relaxing and enjoying themselves. But that doesn't mean that we didn't see plenty of action. Here we see a mother bear teaching her cubs how to fish for the salmon here in McNeil River. Often the cubs would succeed at scaring the fish more often than catching them, so Mom would bring them a little trophy salmon so they could be well fed as she watched over them and made sure they were safe while they were learning the tools they would need to live a healthy and happy life. As the bears get older, however, they will not have Mom to look over their shoulder, and so they will need to learn how to protect themselves. These 2 juvenile male brown bears are play fighting, an activity that will help them learn the skills required to survive a real battle should they ever have one. But at the end of the day, I will say that regardless of how important this is for their future survival, it is just gosh darn adorable to watch. After a few more mighty blows were exchanged, we saw that some of the bears were heading further upriver. So we started to gather our supplies and head to our next destination. It was always so interesting to see the bears travel such long distances to try new fishing spots and new fishing techniques to see what would work and at what time of day. The area we were headed towards next was unique because it had both deep and shallow water. And once again, just as soon as we set up, look who comes to say hello, and so close. This large coastal brown bear never even stopped to sniff or look at us. Human beings in McNeil River are so much a part of their normal environment that we might as well have just been a tree or another shrub. There are only so many hours in the day, and these bears are on a mission to catch as many salmon as possible, and that is their only concern. During our time in McNeil River, we observed two primary types of fishing behaviors. This one, which my wife most adorably deemed snorkel bear, is when the bears literally plunge their heads under the water with their ears still above, and then they're actually looking for the salmon so that they can hunt them underwater. Usually we would see this happen as the bears were happily bobbing and floating while they kicked off the bottom of the river when they were traveling to a new fishing ground. This was more like trolling on a boat as opposed to setting up shop and dropping a line. The second fishing behavior was the more classic, extremely vigorous and calorie-intense romp around and chase after the fish directly. The salmon are extremely slippery and extremely fast, and they're changing direction every few seconds at high speed, and these large animals are trying to run through the water to keep up. But one well-timed pounce, and it's all over. Most of the bears then bring their catch to the shore so they can safely chow down. These animals can never afford to lose an opportunity to catch another fish and to have another meal. So just look what happens while he's chowing down.
Whoa! Oh my goodness! You go!
I think it goes without saying that this guy will likely survive the coming winter. Now, catching all this fish right on the side of the shore with the other bears present likely attracts a lot of attention. So some bears opt to eat their meals high up in the hills. All this tall grass and fireweed provides excellent protection against the other bears even being able to see their catch. But a curious seagull is flying above and eventually maybe giving away their position. And just a few moments later, a new visitor arrives. These bears cannot afford to get into a fight over something as simple as a half-eaten salmon. So the new intruder pretends like he's just there sniffing the flowers, not interested in your fish at all. But that trick is not going to work. I guess they'll have to go get their own catch. So my wife and I turned our attentions back to the river, where most of the action was happening. And in doing so, we learned a lesson that we will never forget about needing to keep your wits about you. The sound of a few heavy paws hitting the ground right from behind us. Now, no one panicked, and we all stayed calm. We watched the bear gently walk by from one hunting ground to the next. In a situation like this, it's hard to imagine not thinking the bear was sneaking up on us. But again, the people who manage this place make sure that we are always in the same spots over and over so the bears know exactly where we might be. Once again, we packed up our gear and decided to follow the bears to our next spot. But before we could leave, this bear needed to cross in front of us, so we didn't invade their space. So we all stopped to enjoy them. But, oh, apparently they needed to relieve themselves. How majestic. After getting to enjoy all the sights, sounds, and smells of this amazing scene, we were once again permitted to start moving towards our next location. About halfway there, though, the guides got our attention. And just look what happened yet again. You know you are close to a bear when you're putting away your fancy camera equipment and pulling out your cell phone. Our next destination would take us the furthest up the river that we could go before reaching the falls themselves. In this area, we saw more bears than I've ever seen in my life. In this scene alone, you can see 4 bears all fishing in the foreground all the way to the background. Although they are off screen, there were bears to the left of us and bears to the right of us. We had to be somewhat selective and only try and follow the bears that we thought might get into some action. This guy was headed towards the shore, and wouldn't you know it, just as soon as he gets close to the shore, there's another bear looking out into the water that we hadn't even noticed. We did eventually get up to the falls area, but this time of year, which was mid to late August, had very few viewing opportunities to see the bears. So we decided to stick to lower McNeil River. During our time here, it was really amazing to see that the bears would come out to feed in almost any weather conditions. On this particular day, it was raining and blowing about 40 miles an hour, and they were completely undeterred. Every day at McNeil was a non-stop feeding frenzy for the bears. They would use their various techniques and catch their salmon and end up on the shore enjoying their catch. The bears would often attempt to steal food from each other, so you would always see them take a bite and then perk their head up and look over their shoulder to make sure somebody wasn't coming to steal their treasure. Even the seagulls would get brave enough and wait it out and see if they could get a part of that fish. But often, they would weigh their options and decide it would be safer to just go somewhere else. At the end of every day, the bears would sit and digest their meals under the midnight sun before heading back up into the hills to rest, because they'd be doing this all again the next day. The hikes were long and the bears were so close that towards the end of the trip, many people decided that they would just bring their cell phone and leave the heavy camera equipment back at camp. Not only that, but I found myself frequently putting my camera down entirely and just taking in the sights and scenes around me. Getting back to base camp on our final day was an incredible relief after such an amazing few days of seeing the bears. But on our last day before our plane would come and pick us up, they said that we were going to go and do something called a beach walk. I had no idea what to expect as we had already covered so much ground. But we grabbed our stuff and we were off. Right outside of base camp, there was this interesting area where you could see all the ash from volcanic activity that lined into the dirt and rock over the many years. In fact, a lot of volcanic activity over the millennia is really what shaped this part of Alaska to being the unique place that it is today. But the shapes and textures I was about to see just right around the corner would take me by surprise. We were distracted by seeing the beautiful, dormant Mount Augustine stratovolcano in the distance. But then, eventually, when we looked to our right, we were greeted with these absolutely massive cliffs. The cliffs were adorned with beautiful sea caves at the very bottom. And then from above, fresh water was misting down on us, created by waterfalls from high above. Through all of our travels, we had never seen anything like this. It was like being on an alien planet. Every few minutes we would walk down the beach, it seemed like the whole scene would change completely. In fact, we got to this midpoint in the hike where we were all standing around and smiling and laughing like kids, just talking about what we had just seen, as it was almost unbelievable. At our feet, we found fossils from plants from long ago. Then we would look up and see the beautiful dripping waterfalls coming down from the towering cliff sides. And then in front of us there was the wide open ocean and the inlet that fed McNeil River. Again, we could see the ancient volcano in the distance, and then look upon the serene landscape in all directions. Really, just absolutely unlike anything we had ever seen. We continued our walk on the beach down towards the end where we couldn't really go any further. And on our way there, we were gonna get to see something that was really, really neat. At first, there were these small ones, and then there were these massive pillars and boulders just absolutely encrusted in these little rocks. I guarantee you they seemed almost more like man-made sculptures than they did like something that could somehow be created naturally. We took our time and took them in. I thought of them like sentinels on the beach. Then we finally reached the end of the beach area that we could walk, and we looked up, and it was a feast for the eyes. There were many birds that made rookeries in this area and called it their home. We had a few minutes, and they taught us a little bit more about the area and exactly how it was formed. But most of us were almost just in silent awe. Alas, our time at McNeil River was over, and we had to return to civilization. I frequently think back to my time here and how it profoundly changed me as a human being and how I view our role in and around nature. I feel like if every human being could have this experience, it would change them forever. And I give it 2 thumbs up. As a bonus at the end of this video, I thought I'd talk a little bit about the actual base camp itself, as people are usually pretty curious. Starting from the left and moving to the right on this map, there are a number of buildings that are worth discussing. The first 2 are the outhouses. They are covered in hilarious comics but are otherwise self-explanatory. The next is the staff lodging area. You can come here and knock on the door if you need anything, but otherwise it is off limits. Moving further over to the right, we see the tent camping area and the ever-important cook cabin. The cook cabin is where you obviously are going to be making your meals and where everybody congregates in the morning and the evening. Inside, there are lots of books and games and everything you'll need to cook your meals, except for the water, which you'll need to get yourself. To the right of the cook cabin is a relatively new addition, which is a hot sauna, which, at the end of a long, hard day, being able to pour warm water over your body, suds up, and rinse off is incredible. And that's it. That's the entire camp out at McNeil River. If you ever get the chance to go, you'll have a little bit better idea of what to expect. I hope you really enjoyed the video, and remember, as always, Alaska loves you.